Good afternoon, members of the MAG Active Transportation Committee. As a reminder, please be sure to turn your mic on and clearly state your name before you speak to ensure that members of the audience can hear you. And please mute your mics when you're not speaking to eliminate any feedback noise. Because this is a virtual meeting, we will take a roll call vote for each action item on the agenda. As a reminder, if you phone in, you will need to press *6 to unmute yourself. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members.
All right, when I say your name, if you can please let me know if you're here. Hezekiah Allen? Hezekiah Allen? Grant Anderson? Grant Anderson? Bob Bean?
Here.
Thank you. Stacy Bridge Denzak?
I'm here.
Thank you. Jessica Brinton?
Here.
Thank you. Marielle Brown?
Here.
Thank you. Stephen Chang?
Here.
Thank you. Jason Crampton?
Here.
Thank you. Stephen Esther? Stephen Esther?
I'm here. Sorry about that.
Nope. Thank you, Stephen. Brandon Forey?
Present.
Thank you. Tiffany Halperin?
Here.
Thank you. Tara Harmon?
Present.
Thank you. Jason Harris?
Here.
Thank you. Jim Johansson?
Here.
Thank you. Jeff King? Jeff King? Larry Kirch?
Here.
Thank you. Patrick Sage?
Present.
Thank you. Donna Lewandowski? Donna Lewandowski? Jose Macias?
Here.
Thank you. Christine McMurdy? Christine McMurdy? Omar Peters? Omar Peters? Randy Proch?
Here.
Thank you. Woodrow Scouten? Woodrow Scouten? Ward Sanford?
Here.
Thank you. Garrett Topham? Garrett Topham? Justin Weldy?
I'm here. I don't know why when I held the space bar down, it decided not to work. Sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you, Garrett. All right, Justin Weldy?
Present.
Thank you. Nathan Williams?
This is Chris Bridges with the town of Gilbert. I'm proxy for Nathan today.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Robert Yabez?
Present.
Thank you. And Susan Conclu?
Here.
All right, thank you. Are there any other members that are here that I did not call?
Jeff King's here. I was a little bit late.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else? All right, then, Madam Chair, you do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. And just double check yourselves again and make sure you're all muted. If you phoned in, I think you can hit *6 to remute yourself. Next, item 2 is call to the audience. An opportunity for public comment on the agenda was provided ahead of this meeting. MAG staff, have we received any public comments? I think that means we have not, unless.
We have not received
Okay.
any public comments, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Let me make sure. All right. Item 3, transportation staff report. Patrick Stone, MAG Transportation Improvement Program Supervisor, will provide a report to the Active Transportation Committee on activities of general interest.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Active Transportation Committee. Good afternoon. As always, pleasure to be in front of you to speak with you today. I have a very brief update. Margaret Herrera from MAG staff will be providing an update after mine. Wanted to take a moment to welcome the newest member of the Active Transportation Committee, Patrick Sage from the city of Glendale. So Patrick, thank you for agreeing to join the committee. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
And with that, I'll turn it over to Margaret. Margaret.
Thank you, Patrick. Madam Chair, members of the Active Transportation Committee, is National Pedestrian Safety Month. MAG is commemorating that with a second round of pilots in our See Me AZ program. I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank those of you that are on this committee that serve on the task force that help us develop that program. We started out with a big media push at the end of September, and the coordinated enforcement activities are going on through November. So we are always looking for new partnership with our member agencies. If you need any additional information, you can go to seemeaz.com, or you can reach out to me at mherrera@azmag.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Next item on the agenda is approval of consent agenda. We do have one item on the consent agenda, item 4A, approval of the August 17, 2021 meeting minutes. Are there any corrections before we ask for a motion? Looks like we have no corrections or edits. Is there a motion to approve consent item 4A?
Move to approve. Justin, Fountain Hills.
Thank you.
I'll second that. This is Jason with the city of Chandler.
Thank you. Samantha will do a roll call vote of all members participating, so please indicate how you vote.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bob Bean.
Aye.
Thank you. Stacy Bridge Denzak.
I
Stacey.
vote aye. Sorry,
Okay.
vote aye.
All right. Thank you. Jessica Brinton.
Aye.
Thank you. Marielle Brown.
Aye.
Thank you. Stephen Chang.
Aye.
Thank you. Jason Crampton.
Aye.
Thank you. Stephen Esther.
Aye.
Thank you. Brandon Forey.
Aye.
Thank you. Tiffany Halperin.
Yes.
Thank you. Tara Harmon.
Aye.
Thank you. Jason Harris.
Aye.
Thank you. Jim Johansson.
Aye.
Thank you. Larry Kirch.
Aye.
Thank you. Patrick Sage.
Abstain.
Thank you. And Jose Macias.
Aye.
Thank you. Randy Proch.
Aye.
Thank you. Ward Stanford.
Aye.
Thank you. Justin Weldy.
Aye.
Thank you. Chris Bridges.
I'll abstain.
Thank you. Robert Yabez.
Aye.
Thank you. Susan Conclu.
Yes.
Thank you. And are there any other members that I did not call?
Yeah, hi, this is Garrett. I think because I couldn't get in my here, maybe you don't have me as attended. Sorry.
All right. No problem. Thank you, Garrett. And how do you vote?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. All right,
Oh.
Madam Chair, the motion.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you say unless there was somebody else, the motion passes.
Great, thank you. Next item on our agenda, make sure I'm reading this right, I'm sorry. would be item number 5, MAG Bikeways map update process.
Members of the Active Transportation Committee, thanks for having me here to give this update today. So we are looking to establish an annual process for updating the MAG Bikeways map. So looking to do more frequent updates. We're hoping to do this on an annual basis, but the tool that we're developing will be open year round. So you can always make edits at any time if it suits you better. We are hoping to have this as a month-long process or push around this time each fall, but we are flexible and open if there is a time that works better for you all. And we're requesting your partnership in keeping this up to date. So not really different than our previous process, which has been about once every 3 years. We're just looking to do it a little more frequently. And so today I wanted to just kind of give you a little sneak peek or demo of the tool that we've been developing. So I'm going to try and share my screen here. All right, so this is what the tool looks like when you get into it. It'll have just a couple of instructions that you can click through, and it's pretty simple. So we have a map here showing all the facilities in the region. They are broken out by type. And when it comes time to add a missing facility, it's just this button right here. And this opens up another map that will allow you to go in and navigate to any part of the valley. And I just wanted to do a quick run through just as an example. So you can pick your surface type, your lane width. There's a space now for separated, and we are in the process of also adding protected here because we want to start delineating that in the region. We feel that's important to start tracking and monitoring, and also we think it can feed better into the design assistance process that you all are familiar with. So there's some space to add some additional information. You then choose the agency from which you are from, enter your name and email, and then there's an option over here to draw on the map points to kind of help you lay out where the new facility is. We are also working on a function or feature that will allow us to capture changes. So if there is a change in width or surface type, for example, that you'd easily be able to put that in. Aside from that, we still will accept GIS files if that's easier for you. We really want to just make this process a little more standard and definitely something that's easy on all of you to do. So that's all I have for right now, but I'm happy to take any comments or answer any questions at this point about this process.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Justin.
Is there a link that we can go to use? Because we certainly have an extended route that we recently added, and we would like to add that to the map. We certainly are adding it to our own internal map, but it would be beneficial if we had a link.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. This tool is nearly complete, so I think we're just making a few final tweaks on our end, and we will be distributing the link shortly. So this is just kind of a precursor to that forthcoming. So you will have a link shortly, and we are not making you all have login information, but we will be asking that you don't share the link because we just want this to be kind of an internal member agency update process.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. This is Brandon Forey with City of Peoria. The question I had, it sounds kind of simple, but is there going to be a definition for how to determine the lane width and what separated means? It seems pretty simple, but it could actually be cause for confusion. For example, do you measure from the face of the curb when you've got a bike lane up against the curb, or the lip of the gutter? And for separated, is there a minimum separation? Is it has to be at least 2 feet, 3 feet before it's considered separated? Is there going to be a little bit of extra clarification to kind of hone in on exactly what those mean?
Mr. Foray, members of the Active Transportation Committee, thank you for your question again. That's a great question. And we actually had discussed giving a better definition of separated and protected. So that is forthcoming in the updates that we're going to be making. But I also do think you make a really great valid point about providing maybe a little bit more direction on how we measure the lane widths and what exactly constitutes separated versus protected. So I'll definitely make a note of that and keep it in mind as we are finishing off our polishing off of this tool.
Thank you.
Garrett, you have a question or comment?
I do, thank you. I assume that this base map is you're not able to snap to it, but so is that true for center lines?
So for these lines, I think we were opting to not do snapping because there might be facilities that don't exactly overlay with the road network.
That's good to hear. I was curious then for consistency, if you had a facility that was say only on one side of the road, do we offset it, or would you prefer everything be snap to center line?
That's another good point. I'm going to also make a note of that right now, the directional. And that's not something I have an answer for right now in terms of the direction, but we will give it some thought and come up with a solution to make sure that we have it covered. Thank you for that comment.
No problem. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Jason, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So Kara, if we input a new route on here and maybe we're a little bit off, I'm assuming MAG staff is going to see what we input and then manually add this to the database. It's not like whatever we add will automatically be populated into the online map. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Crampton. We will be refining the data and making sure it makes sense on the back end as it's entered.
All right. And then Kara, I do have a question. You said fall published date, but I was writing and I'm not good at writing and listening at the same time. Did you mean this fall or fall 2022?
So we are still working on kind of wrapping up this tool. So I will be distributing a link. We might be a little bit late this year, but I think it will be within the next few weeks here. I'll be able to distribute the link. And then from there, I think if a month time frame can work for everyone, that's fine, but we can have a little bit of flexibility this year. It's not extremely pressing, but it is something that we want to get started on this year. So I think end of year could be agreeable. If that works for you all. Yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate that MAG has these maps. Scottsdale has not had their own maps every year or every few years. And then there was a long period where we couldn't publish our own, but I also think there's value in the regional ones. So I always give out both. And I think it's really important for agencies to be able to have paper ones to give out as well as direct people to the online version. I'm glad that you're able to continue with that. And there's a lot of great new things that have been built that we can reflect in the map.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, that's okay. Yes, and we're going to just do our best to keep it up to date more frequently now. So we appreciate all your partnership in making that happen.
Thank you. Jason, do you still have your hand raised for anything else, or Brandon, or are they just left up from before?
No, I forgot to unraise my hand. Sorry.
That's okay. Just want to make sure we're not missing anything else that you wanted to ask. If there's no other questions or comments on this item, we'll move on to item 6. Regional.
Bob Bean, I'd like to make one last request.
Great.
For the bicycling community that I represent, I'm presuming that their feedback should go to their local representative, but if there is a communication that we could get that I could distribute to the bicycling community about how to provide feedback on routes, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Bean. Currently, this tool is only being developed for member agency use, but we do right now have online on our MAG website a link to a bike map that the public can use to provide comments on existing facilities, and I'd be happy to provide that for you if it's helpful.
Thank you. I'll reshare it if you do that.
Sure.
Thank you, Bob. Item number 6 on the regular agenda is Regional Competitive Programs 2021 Call for Projects for fiscal year 2025 active transportation. It'll be presented by Patrick Stone for information and discussion.
Once again, Madam Chair, members of the Active Transportation Committee, good afternoon. Thank you so much. As the chair identified, this is on the agenda for information and discussion. I wanted to start real quick orienting the committee kind of where we've come from. Notice for the call was obviously sent out August 2nd. The applications were posted online. Applications due September 17th, 10 a.m. with no late applications. And we got 17 applications. So for a single year cycle, that was a pretty robust call. Pivoting from where we were to where we are to where we're going, today, obviously, Active Transportation Committee applications presentations. So we'll be going through those in a moment. Reminder to committee members that scoring is due this Friday, 5 p.m. Please let me know if you have any questions on that item. And then really the critical item is the next Active Transportation Committee, November 16th, where the committee will be recommending the prioritized project listing. So please make sure you can attend or have a proxy attend. And then you can see the committee meetings moving through TRC management committee and regional council with planned approval in January of 2022. Finally, call for projects, the funding, just kind of highlight again the amount of funding that was out there. Approximately $14 million was available between the CMAQ funding and Transportation Alternatives funding. Real quick before we get started on the presentations, just to kind of provide some guidance overview to the staff that will be presenting. I'll be controlling the slides. The last slide of each presentation is the photos. So that would be where, if there are questions, we can certainly entertain questions. I have provided questions submitted by member agencies for applications to the appropriate agency. They've gone through and had reflection on those and should be able to address those. And with that, we'll start with our first presentation, which is the City of Apache Junction for the Southern and Tomahawk pedestrian improvements. Raquel Schatz, project manager with the city, will be presenting this item. Raquel?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and members of the committee. Raquel Schatz with the City of Apache Junction here to present our project for the Southern and Tomahawk pedestrian improvements. Next slide. So what we're proposing is to do sidewalk, curb gutter, bicycle lanes, wherever possible, we're able to install bicycle lanes from Tomahawk, where it's at the US 60 to Southern Avenue, and then Southern Avenue from Tomahawk over to Weeks Wash, and in some areas over to our other CMAQ project on Winchester Road. Next slide. So like I mentioned, it's just we're in some areas we're proposing bicycle lanes, like on Tomahawk Road right here. We've got some areas where we're able to put in some bicycle lanes. We've also applied through another funding source for STGBP program that's going to also, in some places, put another through lane, and they're also going to provide some street lighting and also curb and gutter in some areas. So this is kind of like a two-part application in which we're trying to able to share the funds more so with other entities and not try to take up all of one funding from one source. The reason for doing this two-part application is because with the other source, the arterial bridge program through Pinal County, we're able to apply for a design with that project. So even though we're applying for two different funding sources, we can do the design for both projects under the other funding source. So here you see Tomahawk Road, and everything in the gray is what we're proposing. Although, however, on Tomahawk Road, we're just showing that we're going to install bicycle lanes. And on one side of the street, we're going to do curb gutter and sidewalk. So we're trying to share the load with both of the projects. And in areas, I know it shows here attached sidewalks, but we do have areas on this cross section here where we can do detached sidewalks. So it makes it safer for pedestrians, bicyclists, and also wheelchairs to navigate safely in this area. Next slide. This is the other portion here, Southern Avenue. Both of these two streets are like our minor arterial roads. We're proposing here pretty closely that once they get to the 5 lanes, that these are going to be the bypasses whenever the US 60 decides to or needs to close down. So we really need to make these safe for the pedestrians to use both in both directions, actually. So on this one here, we've already have curb and gutter on both sides of the road. So, we're not going to take out and put in, remove the curb and gutter and anything else like that. But what we are proposing for CMAQ is to connect the sidewalk from Southern Avenue all the way into our other CMAQ project that just got constructed, Winchester Road, which is about 3/4 of a mile from this area right here. So with connection of sidewalk on Southern Avenue to our previous Winchester Road CMAQ project, we will now have sidewalks for 3 out of the 5 miles of the city, citywide. So our city of Apache Junction is roughly about 4.5, 5 miles from Meridian to Goldfield Road. And by making this connection here, we will have about 3.5 miles straight of sidewalk connection. Next slide, please. So here are a couple of pictures, and you can see here, the first one here is the US 60 and the connection there. Just recently, we had some development in which they did put in, they widened the street out there on Tomahawk, and we show them the buffer, the detached sidewalk. And this sidewalk right here is about 6 feet, and some areas it gets to 8 feet. But we've got a end of sidewalk sign right there. So on the other side, I mean, it's just, there's just dirt, like how you see on these other pictures here, dirt shoulder, room for bike lanes, dirt shoulder, room for bike lanes. And that's how it is consistently in the area. All we're trying to do is either put bicycle lanes where our cross sections can hold it, a detached sidewalk, pedestrian lighting. We do have requests from people in wheelchairs to do detached sidewalk because currently right now with the dirt shoulders, they're unable to ride on, use it as a rideable surface. So sometimes they do have to ride in the road. So with the installation of this, with this project, like I mentioned before, we'll have about 3.5 mile citywide connection of bicycle lanes. And this is, like I mentioned, a 2-part project application, in which the other program is going to install another lane to make it a 5 wide with curb gutter, sidewalk, and bicycle lane. So this will be actually a complete roadway project for the city. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Raquel. Moving on, the next presentation is going to be from the city of Chandler. They have 3 applications. The first is the Kyrene Branch and Highline Canal Shared Use Pass. And this is going to be presented by Jason Crampton, Transportation Planning Supervisor with the city. Jason?
Thank you, Patrick. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So I've got 3 projects here to present on. I'll try to keep them fairly quick and really try to address the questions that were submitted. But a high-level overview of this first project, Kyrene Branch Canal and Highline Canal. You can see on the map there the orange lines with the black outline that indicates the new path that we're proposing to install. And basically, it would just continue some path that is already existing in the city of Tempe that when you get to the city of Chandler border terminates and users can continue on a dirt area or turn around and go back through Tempe. So we're trying to make this more of a regional connection rather than just a a city by city route. So we're hoping to serve Tempe residents, Chandler residents, and anybody else that wants to use the facility. We're looking to install a little over a mile of shared use path with some bike lanes striped in the vicinity of the Highline Canal. So one question that came in was, this request was submitted as 2 separate paths as one. What if the funding came in to only fund one? Would the city come up with additional funding to construct both paths? So first, I just want to talk a little about the reasoning why we are proposing to build both of these as one project. The city of Chandler, we were awarded grants to construct bike lanes on McClintock and Kyrene. We put in for that as all of one project, and we found that was very successful. The 2 projects were very similar. It was just kind of a median narrowing to allow for bike lanes to be placed, and doing them both as one project really led to some efficiencies, and it was a very good project for the city. So this would be the same setup where these 2 canal paths are very similar types of construction and very close to each other. I think we can really gain some efficiencies by building them together as one project. So to answer the question about funding, I guess we'll have to wait and see if this project is on the cutoff line where we have to accept partial funding. We'll have to see how much partial funding that is, and if it's enough, I think we'll try to come up with the additional funding to be able to complete the project for sure. But I really can't answer that unless I know what funding amount we're going to be allocated. The next question was about the canal owner, SRP. Do they have funds to contribute? And I am not aware of SRP contributing any funding to these types of projects. So not to my knowledge, they do not. That's something we can ask SRP, but to my knowledge, they do not have funding to contribute. Another question came in, traffic control seems high for this, given that's off-road work. The city standard for capital projects that we use to estimate is 7.5% of cost for traffic control. I lowered that to 5% for this project, realizing that it's off-street. There will still be a need for traffic control to alert trail users of changing dynamics during construction, as well as to install the pedestrian crossing signals. We'll need traffic control during that work, and the striping on the bike lanes near the Highline Canal. So there definitely will be a need for traffic control, lesser than most projects, but I did take that into account by lowering the amount put in that we typically do. Another question came in, why are new traffic signals required? These would be pedestrian signals to allow users to cross the streets, mainly associated with the Kyrene Branch Canal. At Kyrene and Knox, the path crosses Kyrene Road. We would install a signal there to help users get across. And then going southwest at Ray Road, there's another crossing that pedestrians don't have a signal at currently that we would want to install. And then finally, the last question came in about who is maintaining landscaping. Patrick, if you could go to the next slide. And one more slide. Go ahead and advance one more slide, please. There we go. So this slide shows photos on the left of Highline Canal and on the right of the Kyrene Branch Canal. So on the Kyrene Branch Canal, there's an adjacent HOA that has already landscaped the edge of the canal. So you can see a lot of landscaping exists there. Those are maintained by the HOA and would continue to be so. On the Highline Canal, however, there is no landscaping except occasionally from some adjacent commercial facilities, but we would put in some new landscaping along the Highline Canal that would be city maintained, similar to what we do with some of our other paths on canals. And then water connection, there was a question about a water connection being available, and yes, there are connection points available in some of the nearby arterial streets, if not in other areas. So with that, I think that answers all of those questions and a quick summary of that project, but I would be happy to entertain any further questions.
Okay, looks like we don't have any questions. Jason, thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to the next project, another City of Chandler project. This is the Ocotillo Road Shared Use Path Phase 1. Jason?
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Patrick. So again, just a high-level overview. This project is one of the keystone projects, I would say, of the city's transportation master plan, approved in 2019 by the city, where our residents really spoke loud and clear that they don't just want, the same old bike lanes on arterial streets being next to 50-mile-an-hour traffic with no protection. They're really wanting to use our bike facilities, but need a little higher level of protection or separation. So this was one of the major projects proposed in that plan to get people in South Chandler to provide a good east-west connection across the city. So for the purposes of this project, I've split the larger Ocotillo Road project into 2 phases. So the first phase would connect West Chandler, Southwest Chandler, mainly the Intel facility and the rest of the Price Road employment corridor, where we've got thousands and thousands of employees working every day. We'll connect that with the Paseo Trail, and along the way connect several businesses and thousands of residents along the way. So this project would be a separated or actually a shared use path to provide that level of separation and safety that residents requested. About 3 miles worth of path. We currently have a design assistance study underway to identify where the path would be situated, north or south. It's looking like, especially considering what the town of Gilbert may be thinking, it's looking like the northern side of the roadway would be where this would be placed. So a bidirectional path on the north side of the road. So there was a question that came in about a pedestrian signal. Where would we propose putting in a pedestrian signal? So as I mentioned, we have a design assistance study going on right now to determine all of the details with this project. We may end up needing more than one. We may end up needing 3 or so pedestrian signals. I did put in the cost proposal for 1 signal, and I would say probably the highest need area so far that we have identified is on the west side of Hamilton High School there, about a 1/4 mile west of Arizona Avenue. Toward the middle of this project, that's probably the highest need, although there are other locations as well. So if we do end up with just 1 signal, I would anticipate that being the location, although that is not 100% determined yet. And then another question about who maintains the landscaping on this corridor. I would say it's a majority of the HOAs that currently maintain the landscaping, and that's how it would continue, although there are some areas where the city does have to maintain landscaping. So we would continue with the current arrangement, and there is access to water as well to address that question. So I think that summarizes this project. I did want to mention a second phase that we would look to build out in a few years. Moving to the east of Paseo Trail to the town of Gilbert limit is our next step. And the city is currently going out for a bond election. And this project is included in that bond election. So if funded for this project, we could build this project, phase 1, with a grant. And in the second phase, we could leverage that bond funding to complete that second phase. So this current project that we have proposed could in fact be turned into a much larger project by leveraging that City of Chandler bond funding. So with that, I'll take any more questions about the Ocotillo Road project.
Okay, looks like we don't have any questions or comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. And Patrick, I'll just continue if that's okay with the Ashley and Paseo Trails connection project. If you could advance one more slide, please. So this project is a smaller project, but a very important project. The city's premier shared use path along the Paseo Trail, or along the Consolidated Canal, we call the Paseo Trail, runs right adjacent to here. And there's another trail called Ashley Trail that runs about a mile east-west and provides a great almost connection to the Paseo Trail, but there's just a short distance that's missing. And there's a very unsafe crossing of Cooper Road. So this project would create a path to the east of Cooper Road that connects to Paseo Trail and add a signal for a safe crossing of Cooper Road. This is an important project, again, for safety, but I have spoken with a resident. In fact, just this morning, spoke with a Gilbert resident that uses this regularly to commute to work to a place of employment in Chandler. And they go down the Paseo Trail and try to connect to the Ashley Trail. And every time at this crossing, they have to get off their bike, carry it over the median and get across, play a little bit of Frogger to hope they can get through traffic on a busy day. But this individual has also seen some elderly people trying to cross this location and put in some perilous situations. So it's a very big concern for the city of Chandler that we try to address this and increase safety and access to the trails as well for this project. The question that was submitted on this project is, who is maintaining the landscaping and is there a point of water connection available? So landscaping is currently being maintained by the HOA there. That orange line there representing the new trail or new path that does cross through an HOA common area currently being maintained by the HOA. We'd have to get an easement with that HOA, but they would continue to maintain the landscaping, and the city would maintain the pathway. And there is water available for this landscaping. And with that, I would gladly take any other questions.
Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Are there any questions or comments for Jason? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And then just a reminder, a couple of you that are on the phone, looks like you need to mute yourselves. So please hit *6. That way we don't get any background noise.
All right, thank you, Jason. Moving on, next is Town of Gilbert. They also have 3 project requests, so we'll be going through all of those. Chris, did you want to take these 3 together or did you want to take them individually?
Let me just go ahead and go through them all together because they're the same project, essentially, spaced apart on the same corridor. So the East Maricopa Floodway, also known as the Marathon Trail, traverses all the way from the southern portion of Gilbert to our northern border and actually goes into Mesa a little bit. So it's about 8 miles within Gilbert itself, but does continue on further to the north. Each of these would do a grade separated crossing at where existing bridge structures at each of these intersections. So Pecos, Higley, and Guadalupe Power is kind of convoluted. And we can go through that in a minute on the pictures, but to just try to hit some of the questions real quick. The pathway is paved the entire length, and it's actually maintained as a service road by the Flood Control District. So it does meet their minimum requirements for 10 feet and being able to handle the weight of a truck. So it does do that. It is not owned by the town, but we have had communications with them pending the completion of our transportation master plan, which will be done in March, that we are intending to enter into an intergovernmental agreement for maintenance responsibilities and trail usage to just firm that up so it is solid. And then one of the other questions was the clearance for each of these. And I did check with our town engineer and he said that Guadalupe has a 10-foot clearance. The Power Bridge is 12, Pecos is 15, and Higley is 10. So we do have 10-foot minimum on each of these. So Patrick, if you want to we can just run through these real quick. And so you can see the location here for this one at the intersection of Pecos, and go on to the next one, Patrick. This is the minimum standard from Flood Control District, which their service road is actually already paved to currently. So it does meet that standard. Next. And then this is a pretty typical, you'll see this in each of these. They come up to an at grade with no signal control of any kind. So people are just having to, I guess, to steal Jason's video arcade knowledge, play Frogger to get across each of these intersections, which is not desirable in any manner. So next. And then this is our wonderful homemade rendition of where the trail would go underneath. And it's similar for each of these, but taking advantage of going down into the floodway, which would be addressed in the IGA once that's completed with Maricopa County. So we can go next, please. So this one's Higley, and you're going to see it's very similar. Go on. It's just further south than the one is on Pecos. Next. Same detail. Next. And then again, just showing you what the pedestrians are having to try to get across at an at grade that we definitely don't want to see. Next. And again, same similar thing is coming from the paved maintenance road underneath the bridge into the floodway and then back up onto the paved road again. Next. So this one's a little more complicated. It's the same approach, but it's also why the cost estimate's a little bit higher than the other ones. And go next. This one's up on the north, bordering with Mesa on the same alignment. Go next. Again, the same standard. And then the at grade of what folks are having to go through. Portion is not signalized. The portion does have a signal, and it's kind of complicated in there with two bridge structures, which you'll see coming up next. So you've got two, actually sort of three bridge structures there, but one going under power and then the one at Guadalupe. So this one's a little more constrained. There's the presence of water on a regular basis at this location more than others. So this one will probably take a little more engineering, but again, it's the same concept coming off of that paved path and then going underneath each of the bridge structures and then going back up on top. And next.
Chris, I believe that's the last slide.
That's the last one. Okay, so I just want to note here, the RWCD, Roosevelt Water Conservation District Canal, is labeled there. They do control the canal and the west side of the canal, but the paved portion and the part that people are utilizing today is on that paved portion, which is in the flood control district ownership. And I think I answered all the questions, unless there's any other ones.
Jason, it looks like Jason and then Justin have questions.
Hey, Chris, thanks for referencing me in your prepresentation. Appreciate that.
Sure, no problem.
I had a quick question for you. So 3 different crossing projects. Does the town of Gilbert have any prioritization on this? If 1 or 2 were funded, like are there some that are higher priority, or are they all equal weight?
Right, that's a good question, and the reason we went with these 3 is because these 3 happen to be in the top 10 of a study that was completed in 2020 of trail crossing and the need for safety improvements. Off the top of my head, I know Nathan would know this answer immediately, but I don't have it off the top of my head. But these 3 were in the top 10. I believe they were number 3, 5, and 8, and which order they're in, I can't tell you for sure, but I'll see if I can pull that up and try to get that answer to you. But all of them are, in my opinion, are needed. I would say Pecos is probably the number 1, if you ask me personally, which one we would need there. But Higley would also be right there with it. And the reason Higley is important is because that leads you down to the Gilbert Regional Park.
Thanks, Chris.
Justin, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, my question is really related to each of the locations where there is a proposed undercrossing. Currently, there is an at-grade crossing there. Explain a little bit about what will happen at the grade crossings if the undercrossings or the underpasses are approved.
So like this one at Guadalupe and Power, there is, a signal that you can get to. But our intent is, this is going to come out of the Transportation Master Plan, which I understand you all haven't had the benefit of seeing. But the intent is to develop the East Maricopa floodway in the manner of, somewhat like Indian Bend Wash or Skunk Creek, and have a continuous grade separated at all the locations, so you wouldn't have to go onto a roadway of any kind just to avoid those conflict points. So even if there is an ability to be able to cross at a signal, the desired ultimate project is to have everything be grade separated.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Chris.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks, Chris. Moving on. Next, we have the city of Glendale has two projects. Patrick Sage, transportation planner with the city, will be presenting these projects. Patrick?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. I am Patrick Sage, just to be clear, as opposed to Stone. I'm a transportation planner with the city of Glendale. This is my second stint on the Active Transportation Committee. I'm real happy to be back. I've appreciated working with the committee in the past, both as a member and as a submitter. So it's nice to bring both those roles back together. I am going to go over our two project submittals. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss these projects with the committee. We submitted two projects for consideration: the Missouri Active Transportation Improvement Project and the Maryland Active Transportation Improvement Project. I'll talk about both of them collectively first, and we'll break them out. Both projects contain similar project elements, and they're pretty straightforward in that manner. We are looking to close sidewalk gaps in an existing pedestrian network. We're also looking to improve bicycle facilities in both of these project areas. The benefits of both projects involve benefiting an older area of the city of Glendale. This will help us catch up older transportation facilities to meet more current configuration and user expectations. These project areas are also servicing traditionally disadvantaged populations. So we see a social benefit to focusing projects on these areas in that manner. Another benefit to both of these projects is that we generally have existing right-of-way available to construct most of the project elements for both projects. And we also are coming out of design assistance grants on both of these projects to lay the groundwork for what's being proposed for these project submittals. The major challenges that we're facing for both projects are that they are in an older part of the city, as I mentioned, which means that there are potential for utility conflicts all around. And although we have a decent amount of existing right-of-way, that also means that we have a lot of right-of-way encroachments that will need to be dealt with these projects that involve both stuff that's been constructed in the right-of-way, like walls, but also just encroachment use for things like dumpsters and parking and that sort of stuff. And a final challenge for both project areas is that some of the existing facilities vary in width and condition, primarily talking about the sidewalks. So there's going to be some issues with transitioning and with addressing condition issues on some of the existing facilities that we'll run into as we move through this process. Okay, Patrick, if we could advance the slides, please. The first project is our Missouri Avenue project. it's a 0.4 square mile project area. We're proposing 2.2 mile of new sidewalk in this project area to close sidewalk gaps. The project will also install 1.5 mile of new bike lane. Most of that will be along Missouri Avenue, which is a collector street that is located in this project area. About 3/4 of that, we expect to be able to provide a buffered bike lane with the remaining 1/4 mile. Probably we're just going to have a bike lane that will be adjacent to the automobile traffic. Additionally, a 1/2 mile of bike lane is proposed for 57th Avenue. And that on that section, we expect to be able to install or paint in buffer bike lane there as well. These bike lanes, we are going to be using the existing pavement configuration. So we'll be restriping pavement as opposed to putting in new pavement or moving curb and gutter and that sort of thing. We expect to be able to get it within the existing pavement profile. Next slide, please. This shows the existing cross section for both of the sections where we're proposing bike lane. Nothing really to note here other than we have generally wide travel lanes where we're able to reconfigure the pavement to install bike lanes. Okay, can we move to the next one, please, Patrick? Context photos show at the upper left-hand corner, we see an example of the right-of-way encroachment where we have a no sidewalk. We have a dumpster parked conveniently in the right-of-way. And if you look at the roadway itself, you can see there's a fairly wide section of pavement there that we will be reconfiguring with bike lanes. The photograph on the right shows the discontinuous nature of some of the sidewalks where the sidewalk just ends. The lower picture, an example of existing curb and gutter with no sidewalk. And again, ample pavement there to add bike lanes. Okay, we can move on, Patrick.
The next slide would be the next project. Did you want to just take them all or just, did you want to take the other one or take questions first on this one?
We can, why don't we'll see if there's any questions on this one and we can also roll it up at the end. So do we have any questions on the Missouri Avenue project?
I don't see any hands raised, so go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our Maryland Avenue project, again, very similar. This is a little bit smaller in scope. Although the project area is larger, it's 1.1 square miles, but we are proposing to install 0.66 miles of existing or of missing sidewalk to close those gaps. And 3/4 mile of new bike lane that will be focused on Maryland Avenue, where we actually already have striped shoulder along that roadway, which in part is kind of operates as a bike lane, but also in other sections operates as a shared facility where automobiles can park. And if there aren't automobiles parked in the striped shoulder, well, bikes can occupy that area in those occurrences. That kind of schizophrenic nature of the bicycle facility is something that we're moving to try to deal with. We'd like to formalize the bike lane to be a dedicated bike facility where we can. And part of that will be where we will be focusing parking on one side of Missouri Avenue for part of the bike lane. In other parts where the right-of-way is more narrow, we'll be doing a shared lane scenario with shares instead of just a bike lane. But that's just for 1/4 mile of the, or I'm sorry, a 1/2 mile of the 0.7 5 miles of bike facilities that's being proposed. Okay, Patrick, if we can move on to the next slide. Again, these simple cross sections show the existing conditions. On the left, we show Maryland Avenue, where we have parking on both sides. The proposed, like I mentioned, the proposed scenario for part of this roadway will be consolidating the parking on one side, which will allow us to incorporate bike lanes in both directions on both sides of the roadway. Okay, next slide, please. Context photos. These are fairly similar to the last ones. We see on the top photo in the middle, the sidewalk sort of ends in this paved or this asphalt driveway area. And the lower left-hand context photo shows the striped shoulder scenario that I was mentioning. In some areas, this is a place where folks can actually park cars, or you can use it as a bike lane if it happens to be an open facility. The other two photos show some challenges along Bethany Home Road, which is an arterial, where we're proposing to put in sidewalk where it's missing. The photograph on the right shows an area where we have a lot of asphalt there, no defined sidewalk. There's some challenges regarding ADA accessibility where there are driveways that abut this wide asphalt area. So that's an example of this kind of odd area where pedestrians can actually get through there reasonably well, but it's undefined and probably causes confusion for users. The lower middle picture just shows a constraint. This is a really challenging area for this particular project where we are going to, it's going to be a challenge to get a sidewalk fit into this area. This is one area where we may be looking at having to seek a right-of-way acquisition to be able to actually fit a section of sidewalk through in between where you see the curb and there's an existing wall in that area. Okay, next slide. There's that. I think we're at the end there. So with that, I'll take any additional questions that you have. Maybe before we get into that, for both projects, there was a question that was submitted asking what type of bike counter are we planning for these projects. We aren't planning on a bike counter for either of these projects. The questioner might have been asking about bike detection, which we are proposing at signalized intersections. We have them proposed for both projects. We did incorporate a cost of $25,000 for bike detection at signalized intersections. That's a $25,000 each. And that is a kind of a general cost for either infrared or a video detection, which is the technology that we would expect to use. And that would accommodate a four-way detection application or treatment. So that's what that cost is. I hope that answers that question. If it doesn't, whoever asked the bike counter question, if you'd like to ask a follow-up, I'd be happy to try to answer that for you. And with that, any other questions, I'd also be happy to try to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. That was actually my question, Patrick.
Oh,
I might have misread when I was reading things, and I appreciate that. I'm glad you're including signal detection for bike riders. Are there any other questions from the committee? I don't see any hands raised. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
All right, moving on. The next project is City of Mesa, Eastern Canal Shared Use Path. Garrett Topham, Senior Planner, will be presenting this item. Garrett?
Well, good afternoon, MAG Active Transportation Committee. I am Garrett Topham, and that is my title. And today I'm gonna tell you about the Eastern Canal Shared Use Path that we're asking for funding for from Brown Road to Broadway Road. you can do the next slide, please, Patrick. So just off, well, not highlighted on this particular map is the Consolidated Canal. The Eastern Canal, which is the one I'm going to be talking about today, is just east of the Consolidated. The Consolidated Canal, the city of Mesa has fully improved for its length all the way down to the town of Gilbert. And so now we're moving eastward and going to improve the Eastern Canal. And this canal, this section is from Brown to Broadway. There was some questions regarding how it fits into the existing bike network. We have bike lanes on Brown and on Adobe, which is also known as 8th Street, and then University and Broadway Road. That also crosses a future project for a Greenbelt power line that goes between Adobe and University. And in addition to that, just north and south of this project, it connects to existing numbered bike routes. And there was a question regarding if it had already been paved. This section from Broadway up to Brown is not paved on either side. And so as you may or may not be aware, the Salt River Project likes to maintain in Mesa the west side just for its maintenance vehicles. And so we will be improving the east side. We have already improved with pavement and lighting and some signals north of Brown Road to Lindsay, and then another signal at McKellips. South of Broadway used to be paved on the maintenance side. March 2020, if that is significant to anyone here, was when SRP decided to go to a different type of maintenance plan for its service roads, and it removed the asphalt south of Broadway. This was about the time everyone decided to start riding bikes again, and it was one of the major complaints. So that will be a future project to repave from Broadway down to Baseline, where it connects with the town of Gilbert. So there was a question about SRP providing funding. They do not provide funding for shared use paths. They don't actually own the land, to my knowledge. They manage it. I think it's a Bureau of Reclamation owned property. So we enter into license agreements with SRPs to be able to build pathways along the canals. There was a question regarding maintenance of the landscaping. We will be doing the landscaping maintenance, the city of Mesa will. And as far as water goes, it's available at every arterial and other places along the route. As far as anything else, I think I probably hit the questions that were on here, very similar to the ones that Jason had asked. Oh, one thing I failed to mention was that we already have a signalized crossing at Lindsay. We're under construction for signalized crossings at grade at Brown and RRFB at Adobe, which is 8th Street, one at University, at Main, Val Vista, and at Broadway. And we already have one constructed at Southern. So this project is just improving the pathway, adding lighting. And the final thing is that there will be a bridge, pedestrian bicycle bridge across the canal from the east side to the west side for access to Los Alamos Park, which is shown on the map you're seeing now. We can skip ahead to the next slide. It's just a basic cross section. It's going to be a 10 to 12 foot asphalt path with DG shoulders. And then one more slide, Patrick. This is some of the photos of the area. I probably should have had up while I was discussing it, but these are all on the eastern side of the canal, looking either north or south, showing the what's existing there. And Oh, and the final question was about traffic control, similar to how Jason answered. We do it based on a percentage. We are going to have to be making connections to those signalized crossings, and that will require some lane closures, some message boards, and some coordination with SRP for that. So if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer those now.
Okay, looks like there are no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next project, Town of Paradise Valley, 56th Street Sidewalk Project. Jason Harris, Capital Projects Administrator, will be presenting this project. Jason?
Good afternoon, Patrick, Madam Chair, and fellow committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present this 56th Street Sidewalk Project, Mockingbird Lane to Doubletree. Next slide. Have a couple different illustrations here. This project would occur on 56th Street between Doubletree and Mockingbird Lane. It would add new sidewalk along the west half of 56th Street and improve the sidewalks and ADA non-compliant areas along the east side of 56th Street, as well as upgrade the ramps and driveways along both sides of the road. On the lower right-hand corner has the different sections. It's kind of hard to see on this screen, but if you could go to the next slide, give a little bit of the different cross sections. Some areas, due to utilities or walls or other obstacles, we would have to keep the sidewalk that's shown in blue there proposed adjacent to the curb. And where we can, we would meander that sidewalk with a 2-foot minimum from the existing curb. We do have handrails shown on the right-hand side that would have to be there for fall protection. We estimate a nominal amount for that handrail. It's not as large as what you see on that illustration. Next slide. Couple illustrations. The one on the left shows the Cherokee Elementary School. Again, the sidewalk's adjacent to the curb, but it too is not necessarily in compliance with ADA standards and slope requirements. So we would be detaching that sidewalk along that east side of 56th Street. Up at the top, again, another area, we'd be upgrading the ramps or driveway aprons that where the sidewalk would cross. And then on the right-hand side's a typical illustration of where there's no sidewalk exists. At the side streets, we'd have to install the aprons, as well as the ADA ramps there, and good illustration of the utilities, and along with mature landscaping, we'd have to work around. The landscaping proposed in this project would be maintained by the property owners. The city doesn't maintain any landscape along 56th Street in this area. So the landscaping costs there are just for the restoration of those property owners to include the sidewalk. Cherokee recently undergone multi-million-dollar expansion of their campus there. The town over the past summer installed a northbound right turn lane on 56th Street at Doubletree. Due to the backlog of cars that exist in the area, the town has great relationships with Cherokee, and they're really looking forward to this project if it's voted favorably to move forward. When we did the right-hand turn lane this summer, we did get lots of inquiries when the sidewalk was coming, and I had to share with them. We'll see how things go, but to know that the town is committed to this project if it does receive favorable funding. That's all I had. Patrick, any questions from the group?
Looks like we don't have any. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you all for your time.
All right, moving on. The next is City of Phoenix. There are 2 applications. The first is 3rd Street, and the next is, I think it's 20th Street. Marielle Brown, Active Transportation Program Manager with the city, will be presenting these projects. Marielle?
Hi, thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Marielle Brown with the City of Phoenix, and I'm excited to be able to present these projects today. So, of course, I get a phone call as soon as it starts. So the first project is 3rd Street, Rio Salado to Lincoln Connector. This is looking at connecting our downtown with the Rio Salado paths. If you've never been to the Rio Salado paths, I highly recommend you go there. It's just absolutely beautiful, a true gem in the valley. So we're looking at building a safe, comfortable biking and walking connection from downtown to the Rio Salado paths along the 3rd Street corridor. And I say along the 3rd Street corridor because 3rd Street does not connect all the way through. The street kind of goes in and out. So we'll be looking at adding bike lanes and specifically two-way protected bike lanes on the street where the street exists. Where the street does not exist, we'll be able to put in a shared use path. And so that's kind of under the freeway and along some existing easements. Throughout the area, there will be new and upgraded pedestrian crossings. And the next slide, please. All right, so this shows you what we're looking at recommending. So in the areas where there's not an existing street, we have some easements, some areas under the freeway, and we'd be able to put in a path, and that will allow people to walk or bike to the Rio Salado paths. And then on the areas where there is a street, we're right now looking at a two-way protected bike lane. I do want to say we're in the middle of doing the public outreach around this project. So that's what we've heard from the community as a preliminary idea. That's what they want, but we're still looking into it. And based on public outreach, this might be a bike lane in each direction, but we're committed to having that safe, continuous, comfortable biking and walking connection. We still just need to figure out or need to nail down the details, but definitely going to have bike infrastructure and walking infrastructure continuous throughout the area. And then the next slide, please. And so this gives you a sense of what the project area looks like right now. So you can see in places where 3rd Street exists, there's room to add bike lanes. And then in other areas, 3rd Street does not exist, and that's where we'd be looking at the paths. And I think that's one of the questions that I got. I also wanted to touch on the transit because that was another question that came up. So right now, this area is near, or this project area is near 2 transit lines. It's near 0A, the shuttle that runs along Central Street, which has a 10-minute frequency during peak. And then it also is near the 7th Street line, which has a 20-minute frequency during peak for the bus. But going forward, you know, the light rail is being built. And so it will be near light rail, but that project hasn't been completed yet. Also, we are looking at 2 projects. Right now, we're only asking for funding for this 3rd Street project that goes along the alignment, but we're also looking at building a bridge over the Rio Salado to connect the paths on the north side and the south side, and of course to connect to this future 3rd Street project. So this project will connect to the bridge. Right now, we're actually running the pre-design process for this project and for the bridge project kind of together so that we can do public outreach for both projects at once. And we're looking very closely to make sure that the projects align and connect. But for the bridge project, that is a much larger project than this one. It's going to take a lot more money. So we're still working on getting that cost estimate so we can start seeking funding and figuring out the schedule for it. And I think that's it. Are there any more questions?
Looks like we don't have any for this one. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, and so here is the second project I'm presenting on, the 20th Street Highland to Missouri project. This connects to an existing project along 20th Street that we're working on right now, phase 1. This will be an extension, phase 2, to continue that 20th Street corridor farther north. with the goal of eventually connecting to the canal, although this project connects us through, but it doesn't get us to the canal yet. So we're looking at adding buffered and protected bike lanes in this area. Where possible, we'll also be adding a signalized crossing that's a hawk, and we'll be looking at lighting and ADA improvements as well. And here you can see what those cross sections look like. So in the residential areas, we're looking at buffered bike lanes, and then in the area where 20th Street widens out and there's more commercial, more intensive uses, we're looking at adding a protected bike lanes to really make sure we're giving people a safe, comfortable biking route. So this gives you a sense of what the project looks like. We'll also be adding a hawk, or we've recommended adding a hawk at this crossing. If you've ever been to this Whole Foods area, there's just a lot going on in the area, and it's I think it will be a huge boon for the people walking between the businesses and between the shops and the restaurants in this area. So it's an exciting project, and it'll help connect neighborhoods to commercial destinations, and also it connects to the south to our Grand Canal project, and eventually as we continue to build out, it will connect northward as well. Any questions?
Justin, go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you. It's less of a question and more of concern. I'm concerned when I'm reading the application that the traffic count was taken in 2016. Do you think there has been a substantial increase in traffic or a reduction in traffic? And I recognize that during the pandemic, traffic counts were obviously lower historically than they had been. But my question is in regards to the 2016 traffic counts.
Thank you. I think that's a good question. Because of the pandemic and because of the changes in traffic, we didn't want to go forward with another traffic count at this time because it's probably not going to fully capture what the traffic looks like. Although even with the traffic count acknowledging that it was from 2016, what we're proposing doing is adding buffers to existing bike lanes and then also adding protection to this existing area. So we're not removing the traffic lanes with this project. So we don't expect that it will have a large impact on the traffic because we're not road dieting, we're adding buffers, we're adding protection to existing bike lanes.
Thank you for that additional explanation.
Thank you. It doesn't look like there are any other hands raised.
All right, thank you all. Moving on. Next is the town of Queen Creek for the Queen Creek Wash Multi-Use Path Phase 2. Stephen Esther, Planner 2 with the town, will be presenting this. Stephen?
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Madam Chair, members of the Active Transportation Committee, my name is Stephen Esther. I'm a Planner 2 at the town of Queen Creek, and I am happy to be here to walk through our Queen Creek Wash Multi-Use Path Phase 2 proposal. And I know we did get a couple of questions that came in over the weekend, so I'll go ahead and get to those at the end. But for now, we can move to the next slide. So just to get into it, this project proposes to construct a 15-foot wide asphalt multi-use path that starts west of Rittenhouse, really at the end of a current Phase 1 project for the Queen Creek Wash Trail. And it will pick up there and span further east to Meridian Road, and where it bumps into Meridian Road, it then will continue south along the west side of Meridian as a 10-foot wide DG path all the way down to the existing Queen Creek Olive Mills northern driveway. So like I said, it's really a continuation of our Queen Creek Wash Trail Phase 1 project that's currently under design and funded for construction in 2023. So we're excited to look at ways to add to that section and really close in our own trail and loop system, in addition to linking into Pinal County's future trail system close by, You can see it in that exhibit where the blue dashed arrow runs to the east. That would eventually be the connection between the county's trail system and ours. So there is a little bit of regional significance there. With this application, there is a proposed crossing underneath the Union Pacific Railroad. And if you've ever worked or had the pleasure of dealing with such a topic like that, timeliness is always something that I feel comes up for discussion. So we have already entered in discussion with Union Pacific on, looking at what necessary permits we need and any of the authorizations for an underpass in that spot to make sure that, we've went over the conversation and obtained any of those permits or authorizations in advance of any potential construction if it was awarded. And additionally, what I would mention is, as far as regional significance goes, aside from connecting to Pinal County's trail system, really the town relies on our ultimate goal of having an 11-mile loop system, both between the Queen Creek Wash Trail and our Sonoke Trail. So eventually, this connection allows people from what I consider to be one of our furthest southeastern portions of town the potential to get all the way from there to what is Power Road, the border between town of Gilbert and town of Queen Creek. So it does have some significance for town of Gilbert as well. And we have received letters of support from the owner of the Olive Mill, Pinal County, and town of Gilbert. And that's really the project in a nutshell. If we can switch to the next slide, just to take a look at the sectionals here. So again, the section 1 and section 2, that 15-foot wide asphalt path, that is the span that will run from east to west from the phase 1 portion that's under design right now. And then again, when it hits Meridian Road as it goes south, it'll turn into decomposed granite. That is a 10-foot wide path on the west side. Jump to the next slide, please. And I think these images are good to kind of get an idea of what's currently existing out there. So like I said, in addition to crossing underneath the railroad, there is already a bridge that is Rittenhouse Road. So it goes underneath both of those. And Meridian Road is currently a newer road that the town has actually improved for access out there. And with these in mind, I think I'll jump to the questions that came in. So for sections 1 and 2, there was a question about what was the length, the overall length of the 15-foot wide asphalt portion, and then what was the length of the decomposed granite portion. So it's fairly straightforward. Sections 1 and 2, which make up that 15-foot wide asphalt path, it's right around 4,100 feet total. And then when you bump into Meridian Road and it turns into DG, that would be section 3. That is approximately 3,200 feet. So the sum of those is how we came up with our overall approximated length of about 1.35 miles, 7,300 feet total. And I believe the other question we had that came in was related to funding. There was the clarification that because the path that runs south along Meridian Road was DG and not an actual paved path, it was a trail, it wouldn't be eligible for CMAQ funding. We understood that. And in the past, similar for some of our other projects that we've gotten funding for, we were open to the transportation alternative funds. We just wanted to make sure that we were open for both. So I hope that clarifies the comment. And with that, I will go ahead and conclude. I'm open to any other questions if there are some.
I don't see any hands raised. So thank you.
All right, moving on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Moving on. Next, we have 2 City of Scottsdale projects. Susan, did you want to take these separately, or how did you want to?
I can do both together. I don't recall receiving questions. So if you did send any, I apologize. Just let me know after the first one, and then I can present the second one after that. We're very excited about this project. So I call this a short but mighty path at the Indian Bend Wash Path extension in the Westworld area from McDowell Mountain Ranch Road to Bell Road. You may have seen variations of this in the past when they were longer segments, and we've really closed gaps in this area, but this is a final gap, what you see for the project area here in red, and that's behind Notre Dame Prep High School. There are 2 green polygons on this map here that represent the Westworld sports fields and Bell Road sports complex that are actually building path and trail in conjunction with those two projects. So that's part of why this is a shorter segment than what we had in the past, but it's just over half a mile for a 10-foot wide concrete path and 8-foot DG trail. This is a very important area. There's a lot going on. So for some context, to the west is the Loop 101 freeway. Just to the south is the Central Arizona Project Canal. There is a non-motorized existing bike ped bridge over the canal, so that's not a barrier for path users. But there is an area on the existing path where this connects that used to hold water for long periods. That's being addressed with the Westworld Sports Complex project, so that won't be an issue anymore. This path is very important since it connects in a busy area, but where there are a lot of events being held where people would want to bike and walk alternative to driving. Just to the south of the project area is the Westworld Event Center. East of Thompson Peak Parkway is the Arabian Library, McDowell Mountain Ranch Park and Aquatic Center. There are 2 schools in that area. And to the north of the project area is DC Ranch, where there are more paths connected. And then the blue lines on the map represent bike lanes. If you've ever biked in that area and you're not comfortable biking on major roads with traffic, you would probably want this lower stress route for paths. Another thing that we've got feedback from the public is just that anybody that lives in this area who does like to bike says, I'm so close to the Indian Bend Wash path, but I can't get to it from my neighborhood without having to use the street in my neighborhood. So that's another reason that this is a very important project. The project would also connect underneath Bell Road, the existing bridge, and then hook to the north side to the 8-foot side path and the bike lanes that are on Bell Road. We're currently acquiring a small a small easement from Toll Brothers on that north side. There's existing easements, but they don't quite line up with what we need for the alignment. And we're already in discussion with them to acquire what we need. This will also feature a bike counter and wayfinding signage. We've gotten a lot of feedback from the public that signage helped them to know where they are in the system. But what's great about where this will connect is that this can carry you without interacting with traffic all the way down to Tempe. So that's a 15-mile path that we will now be able to connect people to through this gap. And then from Tempe, they can continue on to Mesa or Phoenix, again, with a lot of grade separated crossings. So this area, I believe, if you would like to go to the next slide, just shows you a simple cross section. This is consistent with what we already have in the area and what we like to build. Some people do like that DG surface off to the side of the path, and there are equestrians in this area. The path will be striped, so people know they're on the main system. As far as events in the area, there are almost 1 million visitors a year, all in that small area of the map. So again, this can really make a difference in helping people connect to the destinations along there, including the special events. If you'd like to go to the next slide, please. This shows the existing conditions right now. This is also in Riata Pass Wash, where there are upcoming improvements to the wash. But if you look at the first photo upper left, it's looking under the bridge, looking north. It's pretty rocky terrain at this time. The city does own the parcel of land that this will go on. And once people can connect through here, they'll be able to go east-west from Bell Road or go up through the upcoming path with the ball field project and continue on from there. There's also 94th and 98th Street in either direction are lower traffic streets that have bike lanes. And the bottom photo shows you a little bit better view of that area where we'll be acquiring the easement and connecting along to the north side of Bell Road. And then this upper right photo just kind of looks eastward toward where the current path ends now. And if you got on it from here, you could go all the way to Tempe And also that you could go from here to those nearby destinations like the aquatic center, the library, the schools. And then again, heading north from the project area connects people to DC Ranch, where there are a lot of current existing paths and trails with others planned in the future. I think that might be the last slide for that one.
Correct. Did you want to take questions on this project?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take questions on, if there are any. Okay, looks like we don't have any. Moving on to the next one. Our second application is for Central Arizona Project Canal Path from Scottsdale Road to Northside Boulevard. This is very close to the previous project, but they're separated by the freeway and the canal. This is another very important project to us. A few years ago, you may recall that we did a design assistance project for a bridge over the Loop 101 freeway in this corridor, but this is on the south side of Central Arizona Project Canal, excuse me, and it's on the north side of Frank Lloyd Wright Boulevard, so they run parallel. In this area, there's a lot going on in this area. So this is in the Greater Air Park of Scottsdale that has about 50,000 employees. There are also a lot of businesses, retail connecting adjacent to this project and farther to the south. The area north of this is where the Waste Management Open is held each year. And just that itself has over 600,000 people that attend. And then this is also very close to some high density residential that almost have the same density in population as Southern Scottsdale. So a lot of things are going on in the existing conditions. There is sidewalk on the south side of Frank Lloyd Wright Boulevard, but it varies in width and it varies in whether it's attached to the back of curb or not. There are 14 conflict points along that sidewalk, including unsignalized crossing, unsignalized intersections, a lot of commercial driveways. There's a lot of traffic. This is a major arterial, so it's 6 lanes. It has over 40,000 vehicles per day. There are bus stops on both sides of Frank Lloyd Wright in this corridor, and we are seeing people using it, walking and biking, presumably to connect to the areas to the south and to connect to the bus stops, and also just maybe to use the corridor itself. It is part of the regional CAP Canal Path Trail that it has support from Central Arizona Water Conservation District. And we have a lot of space to work with in most of the corridor. If you go to the next slide, this would again be the similar cross section. So it would be a 10-foot wide path with 8-foot wide trail. And then the next slide, and we have about 20 feet to work with from the fence itself to the edge of the roadway. Then the next slide. So this bigger photo on the left, this is looking from where the project would actually connect to this sidewalk, but this sidewalk ends just at that traffic signal there. And so that's looking at north site. This would help provide connectivity from the other side of the freeway over to this area and get people to all those major signalized crossings, bus stops, and then out of the view of the photo to the left is where we've got the air park and all the shopping and retail areas. The future non-motorized bridge and path itself will also connect to this right about in the location of this photo. There is upcoming work in 2023 for a new interchange for the Loop 101 and Frank Lloyd Wright. So we would wait until that's complete to pursue construction funding for the bridge itself. And since there's already use now with people using this corridor, we felt the path is a higher priority to put into place before a bridge. Otherwise, the bridge would just kind of dump people out. The other two photos kind of show you the difference between what kind of existing vegetation is out there that is maintained by the city community services. Once a path is in place, a lot of those branches would be trimmed, but we really prefer to preserve as much native landscaping as possible with our projects, unless there is issues that would conflict with our path cross section. But it just gives you kind of an idea of, I think it provides a nice buffer and kind of helps with sound when you're biking or walking along a busy road next to traffic. And I think that's everything I have for that one, unless anyone has questions. We are, again, very excited about this project as well. Both provide that local connectivity, but then out more to the regional system. So this CAP project, CAP Canal Path does connect to several existing bike lanes and bike routes in this area, as well as over to the main Indian Bend Wash path itself once you get east of the 101. All right, I will check really quick to see. It doesn't look like any hands are raised. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you.
All right, moving on. The final application we have today, City of Tempe, College Avenue, University Drive underpass at ASU. Chase Ballman, Senior Transportation Planner with the City of Tempe, will be presenting. Chase.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Patrick, Madam Chair, members of the Active Transportation Committee. Thanks for the opportunity to present our application for the College Ave and University grade separated crossing or underpass that's adjacent to the ASU main campus. This project, this location specifically was chosen because it has an extremely high volume of peds and bicyclists. And with that, it was really motivated by 3 council priorities. The first being Tempe's Vision Zero resolution. So this area we identified with the high traffic volume, the high pedestrian volume and bicycle volume that we see here. We identified this as a good candidate area for a grade separated crossing that would remove the conflict from vehicles from the peds and bikes in this area. In addition, it was also identified through our transit satisfaction survey by transit riders and operators as an area of high dissatisfaction. And that's because due to that high pedestrian volume, the level of service really decreases for transit. We have 8 routes that are along College and University that need to make that turn and conflict with the high ped volumes that we see here. So this project location specifically was identified due to those goals of Vision Zero and increasing our transit satisfaction, as well as our goal for a 20-minute city. So you're on the next slide. That's good. So specifically, and this was one of the questions that was forwarded, asked about our ped volumes. In the peak, we have almost 1,600 per hour in the PM peak. On average, and in the AM peak, we have just over 1,100 per hour. So again, this is a location in the state that probably has the highest volume of ped and bike crossings here. Project length is 170 feet, and what we're proposing is an underpass that would have a plaza area on the south side that is adjacent to the ASU main campus, and then on the north side, on the west side of College Avenue, a landing area that would have an accessible ADA route, as well as a more direct staircase as well. And this project's located, as I said, adjacent to ASU main campus, but will connect directly to the bike lanes on College Avenue and University Drive, and is located a quarter mile away from the Tempe Transportation Center, which houses a light rail and 8 different regional routes, and will also be a quarter mile away from our future streetcar alignment that will be completed next year, and is in the area within a quarter mile of 9,000 employees. Next slide, please. So this shows a typical cross section. What we're proposing is a 20-foot wide underpass with a 11-foot clearance or a 10-foot clearance, and this on the south side, as I described, would be a plaza area. So we would have an opportunity for landscaping. Public art would be proposed. Obviously, we would have lighting to improve safety for the underpass and the area adjacent to it, as well as wayfinding and variable message boards, and the opportunity for bike counts to be incorporated with that as well. Next slide, please. So these photos, these were actually taken kind of on an off-peak time in the morning, probably during one of the classes. But you could start to see some of the movements here with bicyclists going diagonally across college and university, making that kind of movement that's already on our alignment that we're proposing for this underpass. And obviously the pedestrian volume you would see would be much more significant during those peak times where we see the 15 to 1100 per hour. And really the bottom left photo really shows that we want to create a sense of place here that has ADA compliant routes that get users here, as well as the opportunity for landscaping in these kind of rest areas that we can incorporate public art into. And I think, yes, that concludes the presentation. And I'm not sure if Robert is taking the questions that we received, but I haven't seen a response. So I think I will take those and let him chime in if he has anything to add to those. We had a question sent to us about the ped and bike counts. I think I covered that. It was 1,600 in the per hour in the PM peak, 1,100 in the AM. We were asked, why didn't we study any other locations such as rural and Lemon, rural and Terrace, Apache and College, Apache and McAllister? Those see a lot of people crossing and vehicle turn movements as well. With the preliminary design study that you see these graphics that came from and that developed our cost estimate, that preliminary design study studied some of those locations, which included rural and 6 and rural and Terrace. Those were also locations that are identified as high PED volumes. This one was identified as a priority again, given that it has a higher PED volume, as well as leveraging our transit satisfaction and what we've heard of the delays to transit in the area. How does this project help separate bicyclists and vehicles when bike riders are westbound wishing to go southbound or southbound wishing to turn eastbound? As far as separating bicyclists and vehicles, that's the ultimate goal of this project. They would, on the south end, have an easier time and less circuitous time to be able to make that connection if they wanted to go diagonally, as this is illustrating. So we would no longer have the at-grade north-south movements for the PEDs. That would be accomplished through the underpass. We would still maintain the east-west movement along at this intersection, but any north-south movement would have to be through the underpass that's created. So that will be completely separated from vehicles, but they would have to redirect if they wanted to move north-south to our underpass. At-grade solutions, including traffic signal operations or PED bridges, were those explored. Through this, we explored through the preliminary design, a PED scramble, so a PED only phase, pedestrian bridge, and then the underpass, which was ultimately chosen as the preferred alternative. The traffic engineers had concerns about the pedestrian only phase causing a delay to not only the pedestrians, but also the ultimate goal of the level of service as well for transit. So that was why that alternative was eliminated, the PED scramble alternative. The pedestrian bridge alternative, there is concerns about the relative cost being close to the underpass, but then ADA accessibility for the pedestrian bridge over, as well as just general non-compliance that we see from the other pedestrian bridge that is further west from University, where users still opt to go through University and make that connection, even though the pedestrian bridge is located there. So that's ultimately why some of those other alternatives weren't chosen in there. How do you justify the benefit cost comparison without addressing the conflict everywhere else around campus? And again, that was part of the preliminary design study. This was the priority area, and we understand that the grade separated projects are very costly, which is why we're taking this incremental approach and applying for one project at this time. I think the ultimate goal with our Vision Zero resolution is to be able to remove as many conflicts as possible, and we see that this is a really beneficial way of doing so, is having this grade separation from vehicles and bike and peds. So as far as a benefit, I think the highest benefit would be our contribution to trying to achieve our Vision Zero status and overall safety. So that's what I think we would say as far as justifying the the cost. That's more of the same question, and sorry, this looks to be the same questions. Why weren't surface streets changes considered? Why are we proposing underpass? So I think that was answered with the previous. If there's any additional questions, I will be happy to take them. And again, thank you for the opportunity to be able to present our project today.
Let me add something. Yeah, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Okay, right now on College Avenue, we have the widest sidewalk. So we've modified what we can to allow more pedestrians along College. Also on University. So we have tried almost everything. We're running 40-second pedestrian cycles, which is unthinkable in the rest of the region. We can't cope with the volume of pedestrians. And if we really start valuing how much this costs, there are over 3 million crossings annually on this, just on this crossing, 3 million. And that's more than anywhere else in the region, and more than any of other projects that are being mentioned here. That's a lot. I know it is expensive, but that's all we got now as a solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I will ask this question, Robert and Chase. Has there been any conversation with ASU about sharing the cost of this, since it would benefit the city as well as the university?
That's an ongoing one right now.
Okay.
We're trying to make them, to make sure that they will not only support the project, but also commit some funding to completing the project.
Okay, thank you. It does not look like there are any other hands raised. If anyone does have questions, and then are there any questions or comments that anybody meant to ask throughout all these presentations? Just something that you really would like to ask today?
So Madam Chair, this is Chris.
Okay, go ahead.
I got the answer to Jason's question for the ranking of the 3 projects in Gilbert.
Great.
So number one is the crossing at Pecos. Number 2 is the crossing at Higley, and number 3 is the Power and Guad bridges. And miraculously, I got that right.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
There was an issue on the railroad crossing. I think it was Queen Creek.
I believe that is correct.
Are the crossings existing already, or are they at grade and you're wanting to separate the crossings? I missed that part of the presentation. I'm sorry.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Robert, this is Stephen again. Both of those crossings, they are actually, underpasses already. We're more so just looking for their permission, and again, any permits that they would want us to get just to be able to go into that area, since it's technically theirs. But yes, it actually is already, an underpass.
Good luck with that.
Thank you. Hey, at least it's better than not having an underpass and trying to reach out.
No, that's not what I meant. They'll make you pay for something if you're going to cross there right away. Be careful.
Thank
Noted.
you.
I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate everyone's applications and time put into that, as well as the presentations and questions. Don't forget to turn your scores in if you have not. And then I believe Patrick did send out a note to make sure people are using the updated PDFs that have the corrected cost fields. So have fun in your scoring. We'll move on to item 7, request for future agenda items. Are there any requests by a committee member for a future agenda item? And I just would remind you not to have discussion, but just list whatever your item might be and raise your hand if you have any. Does not look like we have any new future items being requested. Next item, updates from member agencies. Are there any updates or announcements by committee members? Okay, I do have two. There is one. The first one, the following event may be of interest to some of you or your colleagues and community leaders. Charles, I don't know how to say this right, but Marone, the Strong Towns president, will be giving a Confessions of a Recovering Engineer presentation in the Phoenix area on November 17th. Details are still being finalized, but if you would like information, you can look at strongtowns.org webpage, or we can send out a link to any of you. And Jeffrey has his hand raised.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to let everybody know I had sent out an email for requests for service from our resource center for calendar year 2022. If anybody has anything in mind as far as workshops, try to shoot me an email between now and the end of the month. While I can ask for workshops, technical assistance outside of that call for service, it's always good to get it in that. Currently, we have a designing for bicycle safety on the books that we've carried over. We're just kind of holding that for an in-person. I am going to put together a request related to complete streets. If you have any specifics you'd like included in that. I know many of you participated in the Complete Streets virtual workshop we had last year, but let me know. Pretty much everything's fair game. And again, if you can get me your initial thoughts before the end of the month, that'd be great.
Great. Jeffrey, do you happen to recall when you sent that email out? Sometimes it's easier to search it by.
Just a few minutes ago.
Oh, okay. All right. So everybody please watch for that. And if anyone has questions, they could reach out to you or Patrick. All right, I have one other item. The 2021 Scottsdale Transportation Action Plan has just begun public input phase 2 this week that will run through October 31st. It really gives an overview of the infrastructure that we have now and a roadmap for moving forward. We are emphasizing complete streets for all modes and livability as opposed to rapid traffic throughput. If you have questions or you know anyone that would be interested, the best way to see all the materials and videos and draft elements is to go to scottsdaleaz.gov and search TAP, which is for Transportation Action Plan, or you can always reach out to me if you have questions. No other, looks like there's no other updates from member agencies. Next meeting date, this is a reminder that to committee members that our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 16th at 1 o'clock via teleconference. And hope to see you all there or online. And with that, if there's no further business, I will adjourn this meeting at 2:58 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good day.